Good morning, everyone. I am your host, Joe Gannis, and your MC, and welcome to our webinar about paging system design. And I'm thrilled to welcome our Senior Applications Engineer, John Lufik. His email address is john.lufik@biamp.com. Feel free to contact him after the webinar. Okay, let's get on with our most important topic of the day, rethinking paging systems. John, go ahead and take it away.
All right, I want to make sure that the display is up correct. We're seeing the welcome page here for Rethinking Paging Systems. We have two new products we've introduced over the past few months that you may have already read about, heard about. We're going to talk about them, particularly as they fit into that world of paging systems. My name's John Lufik. I'm a Senior Applications Engineer in our Loudspeaker Solutions Group. We primarily assist on design support, other technical support in our department, and we do events like this to help educate in our dealer and distribution base how to use our equipment best and build successful systems. So paging systems is maybe not something you think a lot about in terms of can we do it better? I think actually there's very few people who think about how can we make paging systems better. There's some interesting opportunities, so we're going to cover some of that, some opportunities for your business. So this is our agenda, sort of at the 30 or 50,000 foot view, rethinking the loudspeaker paging market. Talk about that. We'll talk about obviously the new products, and then some methods for using them to solve real world problems for speech and music. We'll talk about how to optimize your speakers, something that I think generally doesn't get proper attention in sound system deployments for paging. And then we'll cover a couple key interesting specs and some pricing things so you have a sense of where these fit in the market and within our own catalog. And then I think Julie's already released into the handouts panel a PDF just says resources. That's basically just one of the slides from today. And that has a bunch of hyperlinks for different things that are available to you to use immediately. After today, we'll email a couple other things, a copy of this presentation, and then a couple other files that I'll introduce later. I got one quick sort of first question though, and that is, what is the voice band, right? This is something I think gets lost or it gets misinterpreted a lot. In the music world, we tend to think of this 20 to 20 hertz wide audio range. And then reality, it's a little smaller at 40 hertz to 16 or 18 or plus or minus 10 hertz there, whatever. That's the practical range. But what's the range of the human voice? We get all kinds of answers when I ask that question in training sessions. And there's actually two answers to that are technical answers. One is STI measurements. When we measure intelligibility objectively, there are 1 octave measures evaluated from 125 hertz all the way to 10,000 hertz. Not everyone's aware of that. The actual fundamental tones that we produce as speakers or singers, I try to pick a few singers who represent the range, maybe down to 100 hertz for a true deep bass vocalist, male vocalist. Typically 200. I have trouble getting below 200 myself, right? And then up about 8,000 hertz, about where everybody's voice elements end at 6,000 to 8,000 hertz, and there's certain letters that are really important up there. I mentioned that because I think one of the things that we just dismiss about paging systems is, as long as we get the middle part of the voice band, it's okay. And technically, to a point, that's true. From about 500 to 4,000 hertz, if you get all those frequencies out to the audience, it's kind of working. But it sounds terrible. It doesn't sound the least bit realistic. It's not pleasant. And it can cause a lot of confusion. I've spent my whole life spelling my last name very carefully because the letter in the middle of my name is misunderstood on most phone systems, even today with wider band phone systems. So I just want to put that in your mind about when we're talking about paging systems. Think about the voice bands maybe wider than you may have traditionally been thinking about. And our concert space today is things look like this, aisles and concourses. We'll see some other images of typical applications. So, I'm curious, we have another poll here on your experience in paging systems. So I'm going to launch that, and you can put in your vote for what describes your business's activities, whether you're a design organization, a sales organization, or an integrator. How much of your work are you doing in these kinds of spaces? Things with corridors and hallways and aisles and wide areas attached to them. Give us a few seconds here for everybody to get their vote in. We've got about half our votes in. Hurry up, your vote counts. All right, let's go ahead and share that. So you should be seeing now about half of the respondents here. Occasionally, I'm getting a paging system in my work. Third or so, this is a key part of your business. So if you're in those two categories, actually, there's lots of room to increase them. And if you're new to this, this may be something you decide to make part of your business plan. Biamp has a bunch of economical paging horns. These are the kinds of things you're used to seeing when you think of paging in public spaces. Reentrant horns like this that run on 70-volt lines. They provide just enough voice bandwidth to get the basic job done. The larger one at the bottom there, the MPLT62G, this one has actually a two-way system, so that's actually much clearer because it has that high frequency component up above 4,000 hertz. In the commercial line, we've got also some little compact full-range speakers that can go along with these to handle small areas adjacent to larger areas. So there's an assortment of pretty typical items for this market. We've had quite an amazing growth, actually, in the past 10 years or more, maybe 15 years, of use of full-range, high-efficiency speakers in paging applications. If I were to consider paging, even including a little bit of the life safety alert world, we have things that are even some of our biggest products in use in that regard. But for day-to-day paging systems, actually, there's a fair bit of use. Some of our higher quality, full-range, horn-loaded R series, we do that a lot. So there's growth in this market. It's not just the paging horns that have been typical for a few generations, but there's opportunities to do more. What we're generally finding is that because personal music experiences are really elevated for everyone, the car sounds good, their earbuds sound good, their headphones sound good, the sound bar in front of their speaker sounds good, all these things that people interact with, that sort of raises expectations. And if you listen to what we've done as pro AV industry people improving hospitality sound systems, you hear what those sound like, well, that really sets a minimum expectation for what could sound better. And so there's actually a growing interest among people who operate facilities that have a paging need to at least make the voice sound natural, and a lot of times extend the bandwidth so that you have bass through treble range sounds recreated accurately. There are some technical needs that are honestly not met well by basic paging horns because they only cover a part of the voice band. So they may not actually produce the best STI results. Sometimes it can be very poor. So there's opportunities to, as a manufacturer, to improve what's available for these types of scenarios. Worldwide, there's 180,000 warehouses. About 12,000 new ones coming up this year or by this year. So there's been a lot of growth. In our design group, we've seen what would be an occasional project come through 10 years ago to being at least every week we've got a couple. So it's really grown exponentially. And a lot of that's driven by large distribution centers for all the big, retail type brands that you're all familiar with that use distribution centers to get products out to customers. That's one of the major growing areas, things like that. Inside those environments, one thing that operators are doing, that owners are doing, is using the music system, paging system, as a music system as part of a motivational program. So for example, employee of the month gets, or the employee of the week gets to pick what do they want to listen to on the sound system this week, and they pick the playlist. And so that's a motivational thing. It also just improves the soundscaping of the environment, makes it a better working environment when you're in a large sort of commercial industrial space. When we talk about paging and aisles and corridors and such, we also are usually connected to facilities, or often connected to facilities that have like a manufacturing type component or some sort of factory or even electric generation plant or something very industrial. Those places still need good, clear voice communication. That's part of their paging system. They may not care so much about the music, but they certainly care about clear voice. So our response to this actually began with how can we solve some of these things with R-series products? One thing we found ourselves doing a lot was using a compact R-series speaker, an R.25 or maybe an R.5, and positioning them like in corridors and aisles back to back and let them cover as much area as we possibly can with just a couple speakers, because they're a little expensive, right? From a paging system point of view, they're a little expensive. And so can we get a lot of coverage out of just a couple devices? That, along with a little bit of historical background, or a little, technologically, some historical background in asymmetric waveguides, which is not a new thing. These have been around in a couple different ways over the years. These birthed a few ideas for our development group, and you'll see some more about the products that came out of those two ideas. The first one I want to introduce is the R.15-3696. This fits into the portion of the R series that we call a premium loudspeaker, meaning it's good for voice and music, very smooth response, does not take a lot of signal processing to really optimize it. It's a great out-of-the-box thing when it has to be operated that way. It's very much like its big brother, the R.15-3696, but half the cost. So it's a way to take what is one of our most popular models and even shrink it down further and get greater utility and use out of that type of three-way system. Under the hood inside, and I'll show you real quick, I have a couple examples of hardware. Let me bring up this guy here. This is the R.15-3696. Comfortable size to work with, easy to install. A feature you'll see on both the models we're talking about is we've changed the yoke design. So there's a little opening here so that you could slide the speaker into the bracket. So position the bracket in the structure and hang the speaker in it. Makes it a lot easier for an installer. When you're doing systems like this, you're putting in lots of equipment, you need that to go quickly. The back's a conventional terminal block type termination. Another little change for those of you who already know R series really well. On the smaller models, we've been using an input cover that acts like a junction box cover. There's a gasket on the cabinet side. And we've added a turn to the gland nut. A lot of times folks are taking the wire directly straight in. It's a good way to get water into the cabinet over the long haul. This forces the installer to put it in with a proper drip loop. So a couple neat features there. Inside this little tiny cabinet here is everything you see on screen. So there's a three-way horn or two-way horn with three drivers and a woofer in the back. So all that packed inside of this device. So as an R series model, this certainly belongs to the world of paging. It's particularly designed to do really well in that regard, but it belongs in all the other places that you are already comfortable using R series, whether that's sports environments, outdoors, these sorts of places. In our catalog, it lands right in the middle of this range as a bridge between the basic paging horns to higher performance products. And it lets you operate at a price range. It's a nice crossover, not far from the price of the two-way paging horn. So it fits in the lineup really well in that regard. I've got a few slides here that go into more detail that I'm just going to touch on, and then I'm going to leave them in so you can read them in the handout that's going to be mailed to you. So comparatively, the R.15 versus the MPL62, the big takeaway there, because they're about the same size, you have a three-way model for only $100 more, talking about list price, to a two-way model. So you pick up some bass extension, and you get a flatter response with the three-way coaxial design, or triaxial design, really. Step past this. Compared to the R.25 in the line, almost half the price of an R.25 to have a three-way system that has nice smooth output, doesn't have the bass response of an R.25, but for most of paging with some BGM use, that's applicable. So these are choices. There's no rights or wrongs here, but you'll find for paging, when you're thinking about the voice as the primary thing, R.15-3696 can do quite a bit on its own. Again, I'll let you check out some of the additional details. All right, and then the big brother is the R.15-3896, which is a little more than twice the price for a three-way system, 8-inch. It has more bass response, not deep bass response, but it certainly covers the voice band and then another half octave or so. So that's basically where the 3696 winds up in the lineup. If you're familiar with the distance chart, a lot of people use this to benchmark which model do I need, because I got to go so far and I need it to be loud enough to get over significant noise, crowd noise, or environmental noise. So now this is on the Cornerstone site. Little update there. It includes the 3696 in there at the top of the chart. So where can we use this guy? All of these places, indoors and outdoors. So it can be your paging system. It can be your paging music system for a case where music's sort of the secondary use case. I think there's going to be a lot of places where you'll find that the new R.15-3696 is a good supplement to other R series products that are in use in the venue. All right, real quick, the CCA-80, two versions of this actually you'll see. The CCA-80 is an asymmetrical coverage speaker, so that's a new feature we're going to spend a moment looking at. Has the ability to cover more distance from a single position, from a single place, compared to everything else in the lineup. That's because of the asymmetrical coverage. And this lets us deploy systems with fewer speaker positions, and therefore we can get rid of several smaller speakers and have one larger one that produces more all the way around for bass response, musicality, even coverage, right? And simplified installation. Now, just to prove that it's not terribly too big and easy to work with from a lift or so forth. By the way, both of these come with a really handy handout. This is the first thing you see in the box is the template. And you can put that on your mounting structure and know exactly where the holes for the bracket are. So that's available on both models. That's the first thing you see. And then, of course, the QR code's up here for the manual. But just to prove that even a guy like me who's a little out of shape can hoist this guy up and work with it, here's a CCA-80. There we go. So just a little look at the front, which just like the picture you're already seeing. It's got that little slot in the side of the bracket. It It's helpful for getting it mounted. The part I really want to get to is actually the input panel, which is probably not why you came today, but that's actually a junction box. And the bolt pattern there, okay, I'm not in that much shape. The bolt pattern there will fit both US and standard, US and European standard covers for regular electrical fitting covers. So you can use all the hardware you're used to using in the electrical trades to connect to it. And I think my favorite part is actually the Euro block that comes with this. So you're probably used to seeing a Euro block that's one-sided, that has a series of gates, and that plugs into the back, and you pick the gate that you need for the tap that you need. On this, same on both sides. So you get the same thing on both sides. I'm not a hand model. So these are all internally parallel. So you can terminate to one side of this, and then on the exact same side, on the other side of it, the exact same row, get a parallel connection. So it makes it very easy to connect these to adjacent speakers. Installers love these kinds of things. So see, I get a little excited. Where are we going to use the CCA-80? Honestly, it fits into a lot of places. In an industrial space or a warehouse type space, it's perfect for aisles. In fact, that was the main goal. Remember I mentioned the R.15s that we would put back to back and try to cover a long area. They're perfect for that. So the distribution center warehouses is an obvious fit for it. Big box retail is also a really good place for it. You have these deep, long aisles, and you want to try to address that and minimize the number of sources and have something that sounds smooth and realistic. Big box retail. Transit centers, another good place where this fits in really well. CCA-80 was designed to be easily used in a two-cabinet format, so they fit back to back. You can make a parallel connection easily between them and cover a long, skinny area. We'll see that modeled in a little bit. All from one position with one bracket. When you order this, the bracket's actually basically free. So the U brackets come with each speaker, and then the part that joins them to connect it to your support structure, no additional charge for that. That's included. All right, what's inside of this guy? Well, I certainly can't take the grill off and show you around inside, but we can look at what's happening. This is an asymmetrical horn for the mid and high driver, which is actually a single driver with two transducers in it. So it acoustically sums very well by itself and then plays through this asymmetrical horn. So the shape of the horn top to bottom is not uniform. And if you look at it from the front, it's wider at the top, narrower at the bottom. And that's what creates a very unique pattern to project really far for listeners that are, gosh, quite a distance from it and right below it, as you'll see in some of the modeling. If you're familiar with 3-to-1 rule, which we'll spend a little time on, this actually lets you work at a 6-to-1 ratio rather than a 3-to-1 ratio, which is pretty remarkable. It's the kind of coverage you get out of a line source almost, rivaling that.